The Blue Jays have a perfect opportunity to do something special this offseason, and one of the more exciting prospects in recent memory is probably going to be posted by the NPB, and he's going to make a serious amount of money. Are the Blue Jays going to be in on it? Let's break it down on this episode of Jays Digest. Welcome in, everybody, to Jays Digest. I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. And Nick, we got an interesting name to throw at you guys today. It's in the form of Japanese superstar pitcher Roki Sasaki, who is going to be posted. At least we think so. That is the report that is going around here, and he's going to make a lot of money. And his profile at 23 years old, the fact that he's dominated the Japanese league for a long time now and dominated in the World Baseball Classic, he's going to be one of the more attractive free agents that we've ever seen come over to the Major League Baseball ranks. And we saw Yoshinobu Yamamoto last year signed a $325 million deal with the Los Angeles Dodgers. That's sort of become the hub for all Japanese superstar talent. Now, the Blue Jays are going to be in the mix here. They're always in the mix for these high profile free agents, and Roki Sasaki doesn't get more high profile than that.
Yeah, it's going to be a offseason full of opportunity for the Blue Jays. The question is, are they actually going to be able to do it? But let's just dive right into it. You mentioned this. This just dropped. It dropped today. So Roki Sasaki has declined an offer from the Marines. Per sources, the situation of the 23-year-old ace remains uncertain. One possibility is being posted to sign with the MLB team, while another is continuing negotiations with the Marines. So it's very interesting now. And again, if you're unfamiliar with Roki, we saw him in the World Baseball Classic. He is a very, very good pitcher. Similar level, again, similar hype to Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Maybe Yamamoto had a bit more hype, but Peter, the contract, and we'll get into that in a little bit later. The Jays have an opportunity here to kind of help shore up the rotation. And currently the rotation has some question marks. You have José Berríos obviously locked up for the future. Aside from that, Chris Bassett, Kevin Gausman, some other guys, Baden Francis, Manoah's health is still up the air. Like, they need to make some moves surrounding starting pitching. Yes, the bullpen's priority, and yes, for at least this season, infield or outfielders, power hitters are all priorities. But getting a guy like Roki would really shore up this rotation and give some certainty to a team that has very little of it right now in this very moment with Vladdy and Bo on the end of their year contracting season.
Yeah, well, there's always some uncertainty around these Japanese prospects because the NPB, it's not Major League Baseball. It's very comparable to more so AAA caliber. But if you ask me if his skills were to translate over, I think 102 translates. I think throwing 100 miles an hour consistently translates. And he showed that ability against some of the best players in the world at the World Baseball Classic, pitching against Mexico in the semifinal. He was a big part of that Japanese team that featured the likes of Shohei Ohtani, Masataka Yoshida, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Munetaka Murakami. Like he was one of the stars amongst a team that was littered with stars. And you said there was more hype around Yamamoto. I'm going to argue with that, Nick, and say that this guy is better than him. 102. Yamamoto doesn't have that in his bag. He does not have that in his bag. And you look at that, 26 out of his 29 fastballs in the World Baseball Classic against Mexico, over 100 miles an hour. So that stuff plays, man. That stuff plays. He's got a great splitter like most Japanese pitchers do, and he's a superstar. And we saw Shohei come over early from the NPB. We saw him leave a lot of money on the table because he was posted before he was supposed to, in theory. And I think that's worked out pretty well for him as well because he lucked into a $700 million contract with the Dodgers. And that is my only worry with this Sasaki stuff is that the Dodgers have now become the hub for all of this Japanese talent. We saw Yamamoto sign over after Shohei made his commitment to the Dodgers, and those two are obviously very close. They're very familiar with each other, having played in the NPB together. So I think this is probably a match made in heaven for the Dodgers if they're willing to spend that exorbitant amount of money to go out and acquire. And they have it. They have it in their disposal. There's no doubt about that. But having already won the World Series with the current roster that they have, and we figure that they're going to be better heading into next season with Shohei on the mound. I think it's just a luxury that they would go out there and get as opposed to a necessity. Whereas for teams like the Blue Jays, I'll throw some other teams out there as well. They need an ace. They need a frontline guy of the rotation. And Sasaki at 23 years old, he can definitely be that for you for a very long time.
Yeah, it's very interesting because the Jays have other holes they need to fill, and if he does decide to post, and yeah, they have to make a decision soon, whether that's this offseason, it's going to be interesting. And again, looking at his stats, if you're unfamiliar with him, he is phenomenal. 10-5, 2.35 ERA. The year before 1.78, and again, they usually, like you mentioned, it's more AAA, but it still usually translates very well to the major leagues, especially like we saw for Yamamoto. Struggled a tiny bit out of the gate, but ever since then he's been phenomenal. But the question is, do the Dodgers? I'm going to throw the Mets out there as well because they have Steve Cohen. They have tons of money. They've been involved in the Yamamoto sweepstakes. The Jays were also briefly mentioned and involved to a degree in the Yamamoto sweepstakes. And the Jays have been kind of involved in a lot of players like this in the past, so they could go for someone like this. The only question is, do they want to give a guy this much money now? The contract, we don't know at this point. It hasn't really gotten to the stages of numbers, but if it's anything like Yamamoto's contract, the Jays will probably have to pick, and again, they have to extend Vladdy this offseason. They have, the rumor to be all in on Juan Soto, which is still up in the air to see what that's happening. So it's a lot of money that could be spent for the Jays this season. I don't think they get Roki and another big fish, and that's the question you do is, would they be willing to spend almost $1 billion between Juan Soto, not Juan Soto, but Vladdy plus everybody else in free agency? Whether that's Juan Soto, whether that's Roki, and hopefully, Juan Soto. But again, it's a lot of money to spend, and Rogers has been willing to do it, but it would be very risky, especially because starting pitching isn't their number one priority.
They've always been the type to spend money, there's no doubt, but never to this extent. And I'll say that you have to beat the Dodgers and you have to beat those teams at their own game. You have to outspend them, and you have the capability to outspend them. Rogers is not struggling financially here. They have the amount of cash flow to be able to make these moves happen. And if you want to contend for a World Series, if you want to fill up your stadium, because it wasn't very full last year towards the end of the year, Nick, and with all the renovations, all the money that's been poured into investing in this team, I think they're going to try to make some big splashes this offseason. Now, I don't know if it's going to be a $1 billion level splash in the form of Soto and Roki Sasaki, but what I can guarantee you is that they're going to try to make this team better, especially with the impending free agencies of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bichette. Like I look at those two guys and they have one foot out the door right now. And even though they may not say that, they do because a 1 year contract is like a dark cloud just hanging over the head of the Toronto Blue Jays. And you want to get that done sooner rather than later. So if you spend the money, if you bring in marquee talent like Sasaki, like Soto, like Alex Bregman, like any name out there that you want to throw that is going to make this team better next year, I think that shows the current core players that you're serious about winning, and that gives you a better chance to win. The American League was not good this year. This was a golden opportunity this year for the Blue Jays to make a deep run. The Yankees got to the World Series, but they faced the Kansas City Royals and the Cleveland Guardians on their way there. Now, both those teams were not expected to make the playoffs heading into the season. So that is the landscape of the American League. It is clearly not as strong as the National League because the National League, you could argue, had four out of the five best teams in the league with the Mets, the Phillies, the San Diego Padres, and obviously the Los Angeles Dodgers. And that's where the real gauntlet was. So if you can add to this team, I think you're not that far away from a World Series that we may think. Maybe you're far away from winning the World Series and beating the stacked Los Angeles Dodgers, but I take a look at that, Nick, and I say the AL is wide open. A couple of moves, and we're cooking with fire here. Like you're able to get yourself a lot closer to where you want to be if you make some of these big time additions.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Jays are closer to a deep playoff run than fans think, even though they haven't made one in a while. You mentioned the East or the AL is not very strong right now, and again, I think the biggest advocator for the Jays making a big splash, whether that's Sasaki or whether that's Juan Soto, is the fact they just spent so much money on renovations and they put together a losing team with losing, and the fans kind of reciprocated that energy. So let us know in the comments your thoughts on that. But one quick thing, Peter, before I wrap up, he finally actually won a Gold Glove award, which is actually a little bit surprising given the fact he split some time in left and center, but. Peter, any thoughts on this? He finally got it. He deserved it. He's the best outfield defender in baseball. He's probably the best defender in general in baseball. And he finally got his crown. And again, the runner-up were Jarren Duran, Jake Myers. And if you're curious in some of the other spots there, we can see some of the other AL winners. But he finally got it. And congratulations to Dalton Varsho.
About time. He should win the Platinum Glove as well. I don't know if that's been announced yet, but I'm sure he's going to be in the running for it. All of those highlight catches that he made in center field. And then once he was out for the rest of the season, I know the games were meaningless, but you could tell that there was a noticeable hole defensively in center field. So shout out to Dalton Varsho. He gets crapped on a lot for the kind of hitter that he is and the lack of offense that he provides at times. But there is no doubt that he is the best defender in baseball, and I don't think it's remotely close. Like his combination with his speed and his ability to track balls off the bat, second to none. I know we've had some great center fielders in Toronto, like Kevin Pillar, like Kevin Kiermaier as well, but Dalton Varsho might be the best one that I've seen out of all of them, and it's so impressive to watch this guy go about his business in center every single game, and I can't wait to see him there every day next year because there's no more Kiermaier. He retired. Shout out to him. Great career. Goes off with a World Series victory as well. So I'm glad that things worked out for Kiermaier, but this is Dalton Varsho's position now. This is the center fielder that we want, a guy that can hit for power, that can run into one, and that can make some spectacular catches in center field. And we don't really see too many spectacular catches from Varsho because he just gets to the ball so quickly. And when we do see it, he's robbing home runs or he's jumping at the wall and catching balls. So he's really impressive. Very well deserved for him to get his first Gold Glove award. I'm sure it won't be his last, and I won't be shocked if he wins the Platinum Glove either when it's all said and done.
Yeah, congratulations to him. And free agency opens today officially at 5 p.m. Eastern. So a lot of things have already gone down, but more are coming. So make sure to hit the subscribe button. Let us know in the comments your thoughts are, and we'll see you tomorrow.